Hey y'all, today's forecast high is 94 degrees. Tomorrow's forecast high is 98 degrees. And it pretty much continues that way through the 10-day forecast, except for one day when it's only supposed to be 90 and there's a chance of storms. So as you can imagine, that presents some challenges when in the garden. So in this chapter of Pemberley, Oklahoma, I am sharing my top 2 things I am doing this week to make sure my garden continues to be pretty and fresh all the way through the heat of summer into August. And in the coming few chapters of Pemberley, Oklahoma, I am going to share how I both physically and mentally deal with gardening in the heat of summer. Because this heat, this is what July and August looks like in Oklahoma. And sometimes into September. September is an iffy month. Sometimes it continues to be hot and sometimes the weather breaks. So I'm going to do a little summer series, as it were, to help with gardening in the hot weather. Now, if you're like me and you garden in a hot climate, maybe you have some tips that you use, and I would love to hear them. Please share them in the comments. Or perhaps you're gardening somewhere where you're suddenly getting some heat waves and it's not something you're used to. So hopefully this will, you can take something from this and it will help you. So we're going to start this series off with one of the most important things that I need to do this time of year, and that is stick to my routines, my morning routines that help me get things done. So let me show you what a typical summer morning looks like for me here at Pemberley, Oklahoma. So it's just after 6 a.m. and it's currently 74 degrees. Feels pretty nice out here right now, which is why I like to get out as early as possible to do what I call my puttering on the patio, which is I water my containers. If there's any weeds that have fallen in and popped up in the containers, I will pull them, which neither of these are hard jobs. We've added to that list of things we do in the morning. Not every morning, but from time to time we need to fill the fountain with water. So, you got to drag the water hose over there. So yeah, it's mostly dragging water hoses around. My hummingbirds are over there. I check my hummingbird feeders, which I can see that one from my kitchen window. So I know that it's still looking pretty good, but it's also, I'm looking at it and seeing probably tomorrow I will need to change that out. And the other things I do while I'm out here is I note things that I don't necessarily do in the morning, but things that need to be done. Particularly, this plumeria back here keeps toppling over whenever we have a bit of wind, and it's root bound, so it needs repotted. But I don't have to do that out here on the patio in the morning. I can take that in to the garage or over in a shady spot and pull my golf cart around and do that. But I just make notes of things that need to be done. The other really great thing about getting out here this early is that I can have the patio lights on, and you can still tell. I don't know if that picks up on camera or not. Yeah, you can kind of see them twinkling back there. So anyhow, that's what I do in the mornings. I come out with my cup of tea in my pajamas or a caftan, whatever I'm feeling, and I get my watering done before the sun comes up. And it's very important for me in this heat of summer to stick to those morning routines, because if I wait to say 10 a.m. to do this, it's hot out here. It's miserable. And that's just going to make me miserable. So coming out early in the morning, it's a pleasant experience. It's also early enough that most days I can do this little routine before I head off. Like yesterday was errand day and I had to go into town. So I did all this before I left. So it's a great way for me to start my day and to keep me on track where it's hot and, you're tempted to just like want to stay indoor with the air conditioning. But if I do that, I'm only going to pay for it later when I have to come out here and it's hot and sunny. Now, so that's my little morning routine. And sometimes that's all I get done is the patio. And then from here, I will go over and I will pick any produce that I have. Now, sometimes I pick the produce in the evening, just depends on the day. But yeah. And so I do this in my jammies. And you may notice when I'm walking around, I'm wearing little flippy floppy shoes. And you've heard me rant about the fact that flip-flops are not proper attire in the garden, for working in the garden. Well, this is not working. This is wafting. This is wafting about with your teacup, watering what needs to be watered, and I'm staying on the patio. If I go to pick veggies or decide I want to walk out and look at something else in the garden, then I will put my sloggers on or some rain boots on or something like that. But for just wafting on the patio, I stay comfy. So, all right, I'm going to get my work done and I will be back later. Good cup of tea. All in all, my morning routine is finished. About 30 minutes is all it takes for me to do all the watering out here on the patio. And I pulled the hose over and watered some things that are under the eaves of the white garden off the book porch. That's one thing that you have to remember. Even when you're getting rain, which we had a good rain on 4th of July, but things are starting to dry up and I will eventually have to start watering. But one thing you have to remember is that even when you've had rain, the things up under the eaves, they're not getting water. So I double check those as well. Here in this area, like I say, I have the camellias off the book porch that are up under the eaves, and I have some lavender over in the herb bed that is under the eaves. But yeah, 30 minutes, and it's, done, and the sun is starting to see it over there. And I've got the water running to fill up the fountain. I'm about to turn that off. And, we'll remember to turn our party lights off because they don't need to stay on all day. And yeah, we're going to sit here and finish our cup of tea and watch the fountain. So yeah, that's my typical morning routine. It doesn't take me too terribly long. And if I get out early and get that done, it's not nearly as oppressive as if I wait until later in the morning. And sometimes if I don't have time to do it in the morning, I will do it in the evening because the back of house is morning sun, afternoon shade. But and it usually cools down some, and it's not too terribly bad. But yeah, that's my routine. One other thing that I add to that is usually every Friday I will clean off my patio table, the table on my book porch, get things ready for the weekend. That way, if you want to sit out there in the morning or in the evening by the fountain, that your tables are cleaned off and ready to go for the weekend. The first of my two things I'm going to get done this week is I have looked through my seed stash and I have found some zinnias and some cosmos, and I am going to do one last round of scattering seeds. Now all of these are 35 to 45, and I think one of the giant zinnias says 60 days to bloom. So that means they will bloom, scattering the seeds this week, that means they will bloom sometime mid-August into the first part of September. And that is when even the heat-tolerant annuals are starting to be a little tired. So this will give me some fresh color late in the summer. So I want to get that done this week. So go look through your seeds. see what you've got. Things like zinnias and cosmos are excellent. You can also find them on clearance this time of year. And scatter some seeds this week to give you one last bunch of fresh growth of summer annuals in late August into September. So if you are a lover of English style gardening and you follow various gardening YouTube channels or Instagrams or whatnot, you're probably familiar with the Chelsea Chop or the Hampton Hack. Each of these refer to cutting back annuals timed with garden shows, that are famous garden shows in the UK. So here in Oklahoma, we have 4 inches on the 4th of July. This is something someone that used to run a nursery in that told me about years ago. That and I tend to wait until the week after 4th of July to do it, simply because usually you're having company and I don't want to have a bunch of plants that are chopped back like right before company comes. So I wait and do this the week after. And what that amounts to is I am going to take this scraggly petunia. This one is off my front porch. It's got a little bit of dead. It also needs watered because I let it dry out a little bit so it was easier to move. And I am going to just whack this back to about 4 inches. I'm going to trim back all this extra and any dead. I'm going to water it in good. I'm going to keep it fertilized. And that should encourage it to push some new growth. I'm also going to do this with the petunia in my hanging basket that I see outside my window. It's starting to look a little bit scraggly. So yeah, let me find my gardening nippers, and we'll get to this. So here's what I've cut off. And here's what the pots look like. So yeah, they always look a bit, like they've had a bad haircut when you first do this, but this will push out new growth. Because they look a little like this, I'm not going to set these back on my front porch. I'm going to set them over here in a spot where I will keep them watered and fertilized. And then I will, once they start to bush back out, I will put them back on the porch. And I've left my tater tot arborvitae on the front porch, which look so good. And in fact, I may not even do petunias on the front porch next year. I may just do those tater tot arborvitaes because they look so good, and the form of them looks well with the formal front part of the garden. So I will do this to petunias especially. They tend to, this time of year, they start to drag. So I will do this to any of the petunias in my garden. I'm going to do the hanging basket up by my hummingbird feeder with the purple petunia. It's looking scraggly. I am not, however, going to do the Torrenia that is in the pot, is in the hanging basket next to that, because it's taken longer to get established because it's a more heat tolerant plant, and it takes a really warm days for it to get started. So it's just now looking good. So I'm not going to cut it back. Mainly I'm going to do petunias, impatiens, also same thing. I have some that are just starting to take off, so we're going to leave those alone. But then the ones that were a bit leggy when we bought them and are starting to look a little bit leggy, yes, we will be whacking those back as well. And then you're also this time of year supposed to cut back your chrysanthemums. That's not something I've done much because last year I just kind of let them go and they bloomed and they looked nice. This year a lot of mine are really rounded and pretty, so I'm going to have a hard time cutting those back, but I'm going to do a little more research, and if if need be, I will. But particularly the scraggly looking ones, I'm going to cut those back because supposedly that makes them bloom in the fall, bloom better in the fall, and gives you a more rounded habitat. So yeah, I'm going to go through my garden and I'm going to look for anything scraggly, and we're going to do the 4 inches after the 4th of July version of instead of the Chelsea chop or the Hampton hack. And it's important in this heat to stay hydrated and have frozen treats in your freezer. This is an Outshine fruit pop. I think this is black cherry, but these are amazing on a hot day. Make sure your fridge is stocked. Bubbly water, regular water, decaf iced tea, whatever you need, stay hydrated. And in other gardening news, we have bought ourselves a GoPro. We're still learning how to use it. We've watched a lovely video on YouTube where a man explained a lot to me, and so we're learning. So we shall see how this goes. So we're giving the GoPro a go. Bad pun, yes. I'm pretty sure this fuchsia crepe myrtle is going to be Flower Friday. It is so beautiful and it smells so good. There's this one and there's a white one over there. So when you're out in this corner of the garden, it just smells wonderful. So that's it for this chapter of Pemberley, Oklahoma. I hope you join me in the upcoming weeks for the summer gardening series. And happy Flower Friday, and I will see you next week.